Hot off the presses, we got some breaking news about pre-made decks in the Pokemon trading card game. We got a look, thanks to PokeBeach, at some new level 2 decks that we're going to talk about in detail here. I'm Jeff from inthirdperson.com. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and yeah, let's talk about the two new the Deluxe EX battle decks that got revealed. These are going to be out on March 22nd, so to coincide with the release of Temporal Forces, and they are going to cost $19.99 each. And you're probably wondering, I mean, you probably already saw it on the thumbnail, so you already know what the two decks are, but it's Zapdos EX and Ninetales EX. And let's start with the Zapdos deck first, because there's something unprecedented happening with this deck specifically, and that is the appearance of Miraidon EX. Up until now, when you see a Pokemon in a pre-made deck, it doesn't appear, like a featured Pokemon doesn't appear in another pre-made deck. So for example, I think a lot of people have wanted a Chen Pal League battle deck, but that got used in a level 1 EX deck. And in this particular instance, we saw Miraidon already released with a Miraidon focused deck as a League battle deck, level 3 deck. And we are now getting a deck that has Miraidon in it. Now it's in a support role to Zapdos EX, which technically makes it different, but we are seeing the Pokemon Company double dip on EX Pokemon, which maybe holds out hope that, hey, we might see a Chen Pao show up in a League battle deck, or some other Pokemon that's already been used show up in a different capacity. And you know, everything is possible at this point, so that part is kind of good. However, with this deck, I am admittedly a little disappointed that they have chosen Zapdos EX. Zapdos EX, like for context, it's a basic Pokemon, 200 HP. It's got the ability Voltaic Float, where if it's got any lightning energy on it, it's got free retreat, and it has the attack multi-shot lightning, where it does 120 damage, and it does 90 damage as well to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon that have any damage counters on it. And in the world of competitive play, this does not see much action at all. Yes, upon its release, it did win alongside a Miraidon deck with Zapdos EX, and it won one major tournament. But internationally, and even within Japan, Zapdos EX is not really seen any sort of competitive play. And at most, people are playing it as a one-of tech card in their Miraidon decks. So to focus on Zapdos as a deck, even a level 2 deck, which isn't supposed to be like the most meta relevant, the most competitive, feels really disappointing, because we're building an entire deck on what really should be a one of tech card, and that part is really disappointing to me. But let's go and look at the deck list. I've got them both pulled up on Pokemon TCG Live, and we can break down how they've built it and what you'll be getting if you decide to get this. So we're going to be getting 2 copies of Zapdos EX. We'll be getting 1 Miraidon. Just for reference, these level 2 decks come with 3 holo cards. And so 2 Zapdos, 1 Miraidon. We're also getting a 4-3-2 line of the Pawmot line. Now, there's not really anything to talk about with the Pawmo and the Pawmi, but Pawmot does have the ability to take energy from the discard pile and attach it to itself. And that's 1 per energy, and you're gonna need it, because for its attack, Electropause, for 2 lightning and a colorless, does 230 damage, and you have to discard all energy. And this is really rough, because this is an energy hungry deck, right? Zapdos needs 3 energy, Miraidon needs 3 energy, Pawmot needs 3 energy, and it's discarding all of it. And so you're like, how are we getting all the energy here? We're not getting the Flaffy line, and we've talked about it with the Miraidon deck. The Flaffy's going away as part of rotation. This needs to survive that. So okay, I'm fine with that. But when you look at the trainer cards, Electric Generator is the obvious card to accelerate energy. Even though it's not perfect, there are going to be times where you brick on Generator. This deck only has 3 of them, and that feels like a massive miss on my part. If we're going to build a lightning deck, especially one like this, like at least 4 generators. I understand this is a level 2 product, but the least we can do is provide 4 generators, especially for a lightning deck that is as hungry for energy as this. And I just foresee playing this deck, if you don't hit early on these generators, you will just lose. Let's go and talk about the other choices for trainer cards here. We've got 3 copies of Ultra Ball. You discard 2 cards, grab a Pokemon of your choice. Nice card. You can use it in other decks. Fine. We've got 1 copy of Switch. Solid card. You just switch your active with your bench. 2 copies of Jacq. This is a card that appears in a lot of level 1 and level 2 decks. Lets you grab up to 2 evolution Pokemon. I guess within the context of having a stage 2 line in the Pawmot, like, fine. It's not a useless card, but there are certainly better ways of getting Pokemon Search than Jacq. We have 2 copies of Earthen Vessel to discard a card and draw 2 energy. It kind of helps in the sense you can discard an energy to draw 2 more energy, and then Pawmot can absorb that. It's going to take multiple turns, though. This deck doesn't have rare candy either, so you're really going to have to survive in order to even build this up, which feels highly unrealistic. But Earthen Vessel, a great card in general. 3 copies of Generator. This really should have been 4. Youngster is another card that appears a lot in level 1 and level 2 decks. You shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 5 cards. It's not necessarily the worst shuffle draw card in the world, but competitively speaking, no one uses this card. Rika is sort of like a worse Colress experiment, where you get to look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You get to put 2 of them into your hand and then shuffle the other 2 and put them at the bottom of your deck. It's not the worst card, but this doesn't really see any competitive play, and there are better draw engines out there. We get 3 copies of Ryme. You get to draw 3 cards, and you get to switch out your opponent's active Pokemon to the bench. Of course, they get to choose what Pokemon they put in the active. It's not the worst draw 3 card. Like, we would normally get Nemona in EX decks, and I guess I would rather have this than just a straight up draw 3. But this is not an ideal card to be in any sort of competitive deck. We do get 1 Super Rod, which is nice. Lets us grab Pokemon or basic energy from our discard pile, put it into our deck, up to 3 in total. 4 copies of Nest Ball to get our basics down. 3 copies of Professor's Research. Fantastic card. Discard your hand, draw 7. We've got 4 copies of Bravery Charm. This was really heavy, but we are really trying to protect our Zapdos and our Miraidon so that they can tank hits and continue to attack. And we got 1 copy of Boss's Orders. Unfortunately, Ryme is sort of our boss. We can't pick, but we do get the ability to target one of our opponent's bench Pokemon and drag them into the active. And last but not least, 13 energy. I'm really disappointed in this deck. I actually played 1 match with it and surprisingly won. If I can get enough footage that's meaningful, like we'll preview this deck, but really not impressed with this build. I don't think Zapdos has enough firepower or enough, acceleration to really make this deck work. You kind of have to hit the ground running or you're dead. I don't think the Pawmot line is going to carry you. Miraidon's only going to do so much with getting your basics down. Also, 3 copies of Hawlucha is absolutely crazy. I think at most for a deck like this, 2, but 3 is a bit much. I guess you could put them into your other decks where you use Hawlucha, but I'm pretty disappointed in this one. I think the only valid use case for buying this over the Miraidon League Battle deck is if you already have the Miraidon League Battle deck and you want a 3rd Miraidon and you really want to put Zapdos in your deck and you don't just want to buy these as singles, which is probably way cheaper. Maybe then, and yeah, you can get stuff like Earthen Vessel and some Bravery Charms. That could be nice, but otherwise, I don't really see a need to buy this Zapdos deck. How about the other one? The other deck that we got. Let's go and move to the Ninetales EX deck. In this one, we're going to be getting 3 copies of Ninetales EX. It is a stage 1 Pokemon, 260 HP, and it's got 2 moves. For 1 fire energy, Heat Wave does 30 damage, and your opponent's active Pokemon's now burned, so like 50, and with the possibility of it being more. And then Mirrored Flames does, for 1 fire and a colorless, does 80 damage. And if your opponent has the same number of cards in your hand as your opponent, this attack does 140 more damage. And so you're hitting 220 for 2 energy if you've got the exact same amount of cards as your opponent. And that's kind of tricky to do. So yeah, that already pretty off-putting to me. I know this card's been in the format for a while now, and I just haven't been interested in playing it because this feels way too situational, and it has not seen any sort of competitive play. But I will admit, I think that the Ninetales deck relative to the Zapdos one, a little more interesting. Let me go and pull up this list here. So we've got a 4-3 line of Ninetales EX. I like this in the sense that you are getting the full Ninetales deck. There's probably ways of optimizing it that we'll talk about here and there, but generally speaking, you've got the core attacker Pokemon here, which is really nice. We do have a 4-3 line of Rapidash, and this is the one with the heat boost ability where you can discard a fire energy and do 30 more damage, and this stacks. So if you've got 3 Rapidashes set up, you're doing an extra 90 damage, and if you tack on 90 damage on top of getting 220, you're doing 310, you're one-shotting Mew VMAX or Gardevoir EX, and that's absolutely ridiculous. Now, getting all of that to work is highly unrealistic, but even with just the one Rapidash, maybe you're doing 110, 140. Still not necessarily the worst. These are interesting pieces that work together. I like the synergy there. The Paldean Tauros is a kind of a throw in here. We're not realistically going to use its Blazing Dash attack. I don't really see a way to accelerate energy in this deck, especially since it doesn't have Magma Basin, which is a core card in competitive fire decks right now. So Blaze Dash probably out of the question. Raging Horns for 2 energy, colorless, does 20 damage, and this attack does 10 more damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. In theory, this could do 140 damage for 2, but the likelihood that you're going to tank a hit and then tank exactly 120 damage and then be able to attack with Raging Horns, highly unrealistic. So that's unfortunately kind of a waste. You're pretty much going Ninetales or bust if you're playing this in any sort of competitive capacity. We do have a lot of copy or holdovers from the other deck, the Miraidon one or the Zapdos one, such as the Youngster and Professor's Research and Nest Ball. So we're not going to talk about those. But what I do like about this Ninetales deck is that there are a bunch of cards to help manipulate your card counts to try and get it even every single time. Like a Youngster, shuffle, draw 5, Judge. Both players shuffle their hands into their deck and draw 4 cards. So right off a Judge, you've already got the setup, which is really nice. We do have some energy retrieval, and this lets you get 2 energy from your discard pile back into your hand, and you could grab 1, you could grab 2, you could just get rid of energy retrieval, and really you're just manipulating your card counts to try and get that exact number of your opponent. 1 copy of Pal Pad. They do, I would say this deck should have 4 Judge, but they do give you Pal Pad and some other ways of matching your hand with your opponent, so that's nice. And Pal Pad in general lets you get 2 supporters from your discard pile back into your deck, so a good card in general. Jubilife Village is a card we don't really see much in competitive play. Once during each player's turn, that player can shuffle their hand into their deck and draw 5 cards, and if they do, their turn ends. So you really don't want to use this outside of the first turn, but if that gets you closer to matching your opponent's hand, and you also get a fresh set of cards, sure. We've also got, 3 copies of Research, 1 copy of Zizu, which is a card we don't see in competitive play at all. But in the context of this deck, it makes sense, right? You get to draw cards until you have 1 more card in your hand than your opponent, and then at that point, you just get rid of 1 card, attach an energy, brick on a Nest Ball. You've got the exact same number of cards as your opponent, and you can smash for full damage. 3 copies of Ultra Ball to get our Pokemon. We've got more Earthen Vessels here, nice touch, and even Earthen Vessel can help you manipulate your card counts. You play Earthen Vessel, you discard a card, and then you draw 2 energy. I guess it's technically 2 for 2, but it can also potentially help you manipulate your card counts and to switch, also with 13 fire energy. So to kind of summarize my feelings on these decks, oh, wrong button. I think that the Miraidon, this Zapdos one is really disappointing. However, it technically has more competitive connotations than the Ninetales one. If you wanted to build a Miraidon, you could buy a Miraidon League battle deck and then slap this in there and you'll have a better, more competitive deck. You're still missing stuff like the Flaffy, the Raikou, the Raichu, the Iron Hands, and so on. But you could, if you really wanted to tech out your Miraidon deck with the Zapdos EX, this technically makes that better. And so in that context, this could be okay. But as an opportunity to showcase some other deck archetypes here, like I kind of did a predictions video a while back. I think I would love to see something like a Goldengo, a Serena, sort of like that rogue tier deck archetype take this spot, and it turned into a tech card, expanded into a whole deck instead. as this is basically an accessory to the Miraidon League Battle deck, and that bums me out. The Ninetales deck is kind of more of what I would like to see, in the sense that its power ceiling is a little lower than I would like, but conceptually this is a fairly complete deck that has your 4/3 line. It's a complete line of the primary attacker in the deck. It's got a lot of cards that maybe aren't necessarily the most competitive, but they do support the overall game plan of trying to match cards with your opponent so that you're getting maximum damage on your Mirrored Flames attack. And so, power level aside, this is closer in concept to what I would like to see with a level 2 deck. Does that mean this is a better buy than the Zapdos one? Maybe not. I think that both of these are going to be very, very situational, and you're going to have to make that decision for yourself of whether or not these are decks that you want to add to your collection or start your Pokemon TCG journey with. IMO, if you're gonna get a lightning one, go get the Miraidon League Battle deck instead. Where's that? Get this one first, and maybe you can decide if you want this one. If you really like Ninetales, then sure, get this one. This one actually looks kind of fun to play, even if it's not the strongest deck. And I think for a level 2 deck, it's totally fine. I kind of wish that other archetypes like a Goldengo, a Serena, got this spot instead, but you can't win them all. So there are some thoughts on the new Deluxe Battle Decks. Again, these are coming out on March 22nd, 2024, and they will retail for $19.99 US each. But what say you? Are you excited for these? Are you disappointed in these? Let me know in the comments below. But for now, I got to get going. Thank you so much for watching. You can find me on all the things: YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at InThirdPerson. You can find me on Twitch at InThirdPerson, where I stream the Pokemon trading card game every Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And check out the website, inthirdperson.com, for more articles and videos on video games, board games, and other nerdy pursuits. So until the next one, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.